Good morning. Can I have your attention, please? Can I have everyone's attention? We're going to go ahead and get started. So first off, I am Captain David Place with the United States Air Force, and it is my pleasure and honor to be your MC for this morning's presentation. On behalf of ASEA Hawaii and ASEA International, aloha again, and welcome to Day 2 of the 38th ASEA TechNet Asia Pacific Conference. We would like to take a moment to thank Trend Micro and Carasoft for our supporting partners for this morning's coffee break leading into the discussion. As a courtesy to our guests and fellow professionals, we request that you silence all personal communication devices if you have not done so already. Now, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated. Please note the two large screens on either side of the stage. If you have any questions for our panel this morning, please text the addresses that you can see on those screens. This morning, we will be hearing from a distinguished panel of current and former U.S. Indo-PACOM leaders who will provide an in-depth discussion on the future of the Joint Fires Network. They will share their insights on how we can continue to evolve and enhance this critical capability to ensure we are prepared to meet the challenges of the 21st century battle space. Our discussion will be facilitated by Brigadier General Paul Fredenberg, U.S. Army retired, Executive Vice President for National Security and Defense, ASEA International, and former U.S. Indo-PACOM J6 Director. He will be joined by Brigadier General Mark Miles, U.S. Army, J6, Command, Control, Communications, and Cyber Director, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Brigadier General Michael Drowley, U.S. Air Force, J7, Director for Training and Exercise at U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Commodore Matthew Bowen, Royal Canadian Air Force, Deputy Director of Operations for International Operations and Engagements, J3, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. Mr. Benjamin Needles, Chief Technology Officer, J2, Intelligence Directorate, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And finally, Mr. Peter Stoka, Technical Director for C5 ISR J81, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for our facilitator, Brigadier General Retired Paul Fredenberg. Oh, sir, the floor is yours.
All right, do we have the mics on? Okay, we do. Good morning. Aloha. All right, I know you guys went to some of those receptions last night, and I want to thank you all for getting up early. I hope you had a couple cups of coffee because we got a rapid, quick fire round to talk about a very important topic here this morning. So it's my pleasure to moderate this Joint Fires Network discussion, and I want you to keep the overarching theme of the conference in your mind as we're talking here, but accelerating Indo-Pacific innovation, because it's going to be critical to enable this capability out here. And I want you all to think of this less as a panel. You know, we have the nice comfy seats up here today. We don't have tables between the audience and us, so we're just going to have a little conversation with the key elements of the staff who are developing and integrating this capability at U.S. Indo-PACOM. And for the audience, please start thinking about questions that you have, okay? Our industry partners out here, our academia partners out here, and our other government and military members of the audience are all going to be integral parts in bringing this capability to a reality. So think about your questions, and you can see the wing boards here where you can text that appropriate question. Well, now, if I could just open up quickly. We're going to have a quick fire round here with each of the panel members. I'm going to expand ever so slightly on their bios, but their bios are in the app if you want a little bit more detail on this. But I want an opportunity to say hello to the audience, and I want them to just explain what each of your role is in kind of realizing this Joint Fires Network capability here. So I'm not going to start in any order, but I'm going to start with Commodore Bowen, Matt. He is a Canadian naval warfare officer, and he's serving on exchange in the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command's J3, and this is his second exchange with the U.S. forces, so steeped in U.S. forces information and cooperation. So, Matt, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So with the J3, fundamentally, we're going to be the end users of this capability, ourselves and all the forward deployed forces dealing with adversaries. So we are looking at setting the requirements for how we are going to deliver on the commander's vision for Indo-PACOM and what the operators all need this system to be able to do, to be able to gain advantage and decision superiority over adversaries.
Thank you. All right, now, as the director of Joint Training and Exercises, Brigadier General Drowley, or Johnny Bravo, or JB for short, right? Yeah. Develops, executes the joint exercise and joint training programs for all forces within the Indo-Pacific area of responsibility.
Yeah, so the J7, relatively new organization, old again, new again, stood up about 1.5 years ago, with the primary intent to provide exercise design so that way we could stress test major efforts like the Joint Fires Network. And so we build these exercises to provide the venue to put the Joint Fires Network into play, see what we can learn from it, and then continue to develop. 2 other programs underneath the J7 also plug into the Joint Fires Network. That's our Pacific Multi-Domain Training Experimentation Capabilities, which that's a mouthful, so I'll call it PIMTech from here on out. And that builds the architecture of the playground to, again, put the Joint Fires Network through its paces. And then the modeling and simulation environment where that way we can, again, create a realistic and complex environment to ensure it's as close to the truth data that we can possibly have. And so that's how the J7 relates into the Joint Fires Network.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Next, we're going to go to Brigadier General Mark Miles. He is the J6. He is responsible for C4 across the largest regional combatant command, enabling joint and coalition operations.
Largest and most complex.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
Maybe we added that. First of all, aloha, and thanks for coming this morning, and thanks to AFCEA for hosting the panel. So our job in the J6, or as the Director of Command and Control, Communications and Cyber for the Indo-Pacific, specific relative to the Joint Fires Network is to really build the infrastructure that carries the ones and zeros that enables this network across this vast and complex AOR. So that means a lot of innovation in building this that's happening in parallel in some cases, but definitely aware of and supporting those efforts as both evolve and as both continue to be more capable. Over. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. And then next, we're going to have Mr. Ben Needles. He serves as the principal advisor on technology issues to the J2 and the Joint Intelligence Operations Center, and he represents the J2 on technology issues for the National and Theater Defense Intelligence Enterprise. So, Ben?
Morning. So our primary role has been to how do we bring 2 major monoliths together? So you think about the efforts that are happening within the Department of Defense, JFN specifically, but on the other side of that, you have the Defense Intelligence Enterprise and then the larger intelligence community, the modernization efforts and the developments that are happening there. We're focused on how do we try and bring these 2 entities together so that they can support the operational pieces that we have to do. And so, they don't let me out of the box very often, but, this is an opportunity to engage with folks who help from the commercial industry side to talk about certain capabilities that we're looking for to try and help us manage information as we bring that to bear. as well as the technology to take things to the edge. So these are the types of things that we're looking for as we try and bring that into the JFMPs.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. And then I'm going to get this wrong because I talked to you about this before, but Mr. Pete Stucca.
Perfect. Right.
Oh, man, I nailed it. That's great. Good deal. As an extension of the Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific, the Advanced Development and Experimentation Branch, right? So you're out here really representing that organization, but providing that technological and engineering support to critical, which is critical to information warfare. So how do you fit into this, and how does the J8 fit in?
Perfect, yes, sir. Unfortunately, Dr. K was unable to be here today, so I'm honored to be part of the board. This is great. So in the J8, I've got two different hats. I work for JD1 under experimentation. So I've been doing JFN experimentation over the last year, bringing capabilities out to several exercises to inform the future JFN. And my other hat is we've organized the JFN into sort of like a JCTD construct where we've got an operational manager, a tactical manager, and a transition manager. So I support Joe Root as the operational manager at PACOM in the J8, identifying requirements for the JFN and communicating that to the technical manager.
All right, great. Okay, now, I know the time is going to go by. I have a couple of questions that I'm going to tee up for each one of the panelists here. But again, this is a conversation, so if somebody wants to chime in, please reinforce fires or deconflict fires, whatever we need to do in this case up here. But Matt, I want to start with you. Coming out of the J3 here, representing the J3, if you could start this discussion and set the foundation for us, just kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of those requirements and the vision for this Joint Fires Network.
Yeah, okay. It's always a risk for a staff officer to try and explain his commander's vision and paraphrase that, but I'll do my best. A little bit of context first that Admiral Aquilino often talks about when he looks at this theater. I don't think I have to explain to anybody the challenges inherent with the area of responsibility that he has. It's enormous, and there are huge distances to cover, and it's very difficult because we have to project forward into the second and first island chain. It's a long ways. Additionally, there are challenges in that those forward deployed forces tend to be somewhat concentrated. You know, South Korea, Japan, Okinawa, Guam, footprint down in Australia. It's a bit challenging. So the commander's very much about adopting a more distributed approach, broadening the areas where those forward deployed forces, both U.S. and combined, and allied forces, are deployed, available, and able to act against an adversary. The challenge that's inherent with that, especially against a really, really capable adversary, or adversaries as we have in this AOR, is how do you get all those distributed forces working together? How do you get them synchronized? And then how do you do that at speed and scale? Because ultimately, what the comm still wants is a force that can see, think, and act faster than the adversary. So really what we need, and when we talk about the JFN, and to caveat a couple of things, when we talk about the Joint Fires Network, we are looking at offensive fires at this stage, okay? Pretty much exclusively, not ballistic missile defense, not defensive fires. Maybe that will come in time, but initially it's all about offensive fires. How do we deliver that for the comm? Deliver that degree of synchronicity at speed and scale. So really when we talk about JFN, we're talking about taking that network of sensors across the AOR, land, sea, maritime, space-based, bringing that all together into a persistent, target-quality, common operating picture that can be seen and shared across all four echelons, Indo-PACOM on down. How do you go about doing that? That's what JFN is seeking to achieve. And we have to do that in a way that is redundant and resilient. That network does us no good if it falls over at the first opportunity for the enemy to hit a critical cyber vulnerability, for example. So that's ultimately his vision. He wants to deliver on that. And to build that into the larger picture, I guess, when we talk about combined joint all-domain command and control, which of course is that larger overarching effort, Admiral Aquilino sees the Joint Fires Network as being the function, the capability that delivers the kill web, as it's referred to in the the CJAD-C2 theory. How we bring together all of those sensors and then any platform and any munition to hold targets at risk across all domains, and perhaps most importantly in this AOR, do that at speed and at scale. I mean, our respective militaries, allied militaries, are very good at targeting. How do we up our game to start doing that at speed and scale, given the primary peer adversary or near peer adversary that we're looking at in this AOR?
No, well, that's a lot, right? That's easy.
Yeah, small
right?
challenge.
That's easy.
Minor thing. We'll have that sorted out by Friday.
All right, Ben, I want to go over to you for a second, but so we talked about kind of the operational requirement here, but are there opportunities for the Joint Fires Network to better synchronize that intelligence and operational communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, we've got two primary things that we've got to do. One is how do we flesh out the connective tissue for how the Defense Intelligence Enterprise is going to support JFN, right? So how are we going to bring in the information critical for executing command and control and combined joint fires? Number two is, as I liken it to the second and third order effects of how do we make sure that the Defense Intelligence Enterprise doesn't move in a direction where the enablers aren't supporting what the Joint Fires Network has to do. And so that's getting into that's training, that's getting into methodological approaches, it's knowledge management. I think one of the other key things that JFM kind of provides a lodestone for is I look at things from a knowledge management perspective, right? And so, JFN is the pointy end of the spear for how we are going to execute U.S. will in the Indo-Pacific. But you don't do that without training. You don't do that without information management. You don't do that without intelligence. So how are we synchronizing and managing the knowledge that we use that's going to support JFN to also have that in place to support how we train, how we are going to do our communications for collaboration and coordination? We don't do anything alone anymore. So how are we handling and managing information to work with our partners? I think JFN provides a great opportunity for us to address a whole litany of issues that's been a primary concern, especially for us in the intelligence side, for how we have to feed this. Information's our weapon system, right? It's what we handle to be able to inform the commander to make a decision, whether that is how he's going to peacefully engage with somebody or he's going to non-peacefully engage with somebody. And so, but the challenges have often been is that we've got all these stovepipes for all these different approaches based off of either how we're going to engage with our partners or for what type of mission approach that we're going to have. How do we level that playing field? And I think JFM provides that lodestone to help us think about things from that perspective.
Okay. All right, so Ben brought up a training aspect of this, so I'm going to go over to JB. All right, we've heard a little bit about kind of the foundational and the vision, but it's got to be critical. How are we integrating Joint Fires Network, or how are we integrating this into our exercises? If you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, one portion of it is from an exercise design, and that is how do we just build the objectives of the exercise from what it is that it's going to accomplish, how is it going to put this command and control, command relationships into practice, and so that way we can continue to evolve and iterate and make improvements throughout. And so the exercises are used as a driving force to drive action. And so for every exercise should be an incremental evolution and improvement to the Joint Fires Network that we're trying to build and refine and continue to improve upon. To be able to do that, though, you have to have the training infrastructure to go along with it, and that's where PIMTech comes in. So you've heard several challenges with the Joint Fires Network itself. It's a very complex environment going up against an even more complex adversary. You're trying to integrate not only intelligence and have a way to communicate that across a broad spectrum and vast distances, but now you're also trying to integrate in kinetic, non-kinetic, space, cyber with the different domains. That's the challenges that the training environment also is up against. And so when you look at service and components that have their own ranges, live virtual constructive entities, we have to find a way to get those to translate and communicate with each other. And that's not only in amongst the DoD, that's our interagency partners, that's also our allies and partners. And now we also have to find a way to do that west of the international date line, and we have to be cognizant of what we reveal and conceal. And so that's the environment that we're trying to build to help evolve the Joint Fires Network. And so several of the challenges that are associated with either the Joint Fires Network, the communications network, trying to make a data source of intelligence that's available, you have to be able to build that environment in a training capacity so that way you can continue to make improvements and evolve. And so that is what we are working towards in the J7, to be able to provide that for our customers to make improvements.
And that's providing iterative feedback in that loop, right?
And that is exactly for every exercise that we do, for every Pacific Century, for every Keen Edge. We walk into it with benchmarks that we're trying to achieve that iteratively goes back to the J8, the J2, the J6, the J3 on the next level of improvements that we're going to make, and that informs Keen Edge. That informs the very next set of exercises that we're doing. And so when we talk about those major muscle movements throughout, those are what we're trying to build to. And then with the J3, now we fill in the rest of the operations, activities, and investments that take you from exercise to exercise, so there's never a lull. That's the last thing we don't. We don't want to wait for the peaks of the exercises. There should be continuous improvement throughout, but those are the milestones or the markers, if you will, that take us from one set to the next.
All right, thank you. All right, Mark, I'm going to ask you a question. So this is, we made maybe a wisecrack about the complexity here, but I'm looking at this distributed, combined, resilient, meet the scope, scale, and speed of the largest, geographical combatant command, all domain, multi-domain. It's the kill web of JADC2, so it's actually integrated. So let me just, with all that, this is complex. So what are the greatest engineering challenges related to the Joint Fires Network that you see?
Thanks. That's a great question. So in some of this is going to be just emphasizing some of the comments you've heard from Matt and Ben and JB, and you're going to hear from Pete. It's how complex this problem is. And here's a great thing about this forum, and really about AFCEA and having the conversation in an area like this, is there is a lot of expertise in this room. There is a lot of innovation and great ideas. So I want to say that up front that this is a great place to have this conversation, and look forward to continuing this conversation even after. But think about the idea of a node, let's say west of the international date line, having a real-time common operational picture from a lot of different data sources that are in some cases looking at the same data element from either a local sensor that's nearby, a national technical mean sensor that's in space, that maybe has a ground station that's 5,000-6,000 miles away, and we're talking hundreds, thousands of data points synchronized on that node real-time west of the IDL. Now take that problem and synchronize that same common operating picture across a number of meshed nodes that could be thousands of miles apart. That, again, don't have to tell a lot of this room, that all by itself is a very complex engineering problem to solve. And a lot of great progress has been made over the last year. But as technology improves, as new tools become available, as we mature the ability to execute that. So I'll do one step on top of that. Like on top of these mesh networks that have to synchronize this real-time picture based on varying data sources and keep it target quality, now think about the processing power that needs to be located there to enable some of the artificial intelligence, machine learning capability to make some of the decisions that you need made in order to stay a step ahead, and in order to blind see and kill at a faster pace than any potential adversary. And then we're going to synchronize that with across the joint force and with allies and partners. So a lot of great progress, not only by this headquarters, but the services through experimentation done in the services, on closing kill chains, on really leveraging some state-of-the-art technology to get in front of that engineering problem. But that really is when you take a step back and you break down some of the elements that you heard up here, I think it's an exciting engineer problem because I think there's technology available. It's just about engineering. It's about bringing it all together, and it's about doing it efficiently and doing it in a manner that we can train and keep at pace with allies and partners that are going to be critical in any future scenario. So look forward to talking about it more in detail or any other area that we need to later. Thank you.
Good. Okay. All right. So I think that tees up my next question very well. But for Pete, Mark talked about experimentation, but that's kind of where the rubber's meeting the road here when we start playing with, different capabilities that industry has or, our national has or our allies have, and putting this all together in something that works, taking all the feedback loop, the requirements, what we're learning through the training exercises. But can you talk to us a little bit about the primary objectives with Joint Fires Network experimentation?
Sure thing. I'm a Marine, so I want to keep it simple. If you're going to write down 3 things from this talk, I'm going to tell you PT COP, Joint Battle Management Command and Control, JBMC2, and the Resilient Independent Mesh Network. So the PT COP, we want to connect any sensor to any shooter. So we want to take tactical sensors, feed it into this network up to the highest classification level. We have national sensors coming in as well. Correlate and fuse that data and be able to push it down and disseminate and distribute it down to the lowest classification networks to our foreign partners and allies and to the Joint Force. So the PT COP, we want to have that picture at every node so everybody's fighting off the same picture. Then we move on to JBMC2, and it's going to have to be joint and combined battle management command and control. So we're going to get to that point where we have our allies and partners as part of this as well. But how do we fight with the same tools from every node at every echelon from 1 to 4? So if one node is taken out or their comms go down, the next node can have devolution of command and pick up the fight and do JBMC2, meaning they can connect any sensor to the best shooter. If the Navy's got a target, they don't need to just necessarily hit it with a Navy weapon. Some of those are very costly. Maybe the Army or the Marines have a more efficient weapon for that target. So if that joint battle manager can coordinate the right weapons for those targets, that would be ideal across the joint force. And then the third one, I think this room could really help with, is that independent mesh network, interoperable with existing DISN networks, but able to stand alone. If SIPRNet and JWICS and all that goes away, we want to still be able to fight forward and fail forward with this network, leveraging a wide variety of transport from PLEO to MEO to GEO, free space optics, co-location facilities, vendor agnostic transport networks, things like that. So I think if industry can help us cover this AOR with transport, that would be a huge, huge win.
All right, good. And there's been some confusion. I've seen a lot of different acronyms, and even in conversations here this week and prepping for this. But can you help kind of level set and maybe dispel some of the confusion about what is it, JFANG, JFN? I've heard of Prototype 1 and what JFCs. Can you help kind of level set what this is going to be called, or what program that our industry needs to get plugged into here?
Absolutely. Just to get everybody in the same terms here. So in the JD1, we've been doing experimentation. So we've been calling it JFN experimentation. We have partnered with TRMC, the Test Resource Management Center, and they've got a capability called JFANG. It's a Joint Fires Assessment Networking Gear. It's based on the Air Force's Edge Connect kit. It's a test harness. We're using it as our transport test harness, kind of like a range. And we bring that out into with the units, and then we'll plug in different tools to that test harness and get the warfighters' feedback on what those different tools can do for their battle management capabilities. So the JFANG is a test harness that we bring out in the field. JFN experimentation is what we do at JD1. JFN prototype, that's what the JFN program is building right now. It's prototype 0.5 will be ready in December. And JFN prototype 1.0 will have 6 nodes by Valiant Shield next summer, deployed throughout the AOR. And you'll hear the terms purple and orange as well. Purple means operational. So the JFN prototypes are operational. They're going to be leave-behinds with those units. Orange is what we're doing in JD1 with TRMC. These are experiments. We'll bring things out for an experiment, get some feedback, and then we bring it back and we plug in some new tools depending on what that feedback is. So that's what the orange and the purple is that you hear.
Great. Thanks for clearing that up for everybody. I'm going to ask one. So please get your questions submitted. We're going to questions next. I have one quick question because I know it's on everybody's mind out here. But this is in the top 3 of General Aquilino's priorities, right? I mean, he's been very clear about this. There are funding streams aligned to, and there is parts of these capabilities are now in experimentation. I mean, things are happening. So this isn't just a vision. There's metal, there's digits, there's computing capacity going against this capability. And so how can industry, we have a lot of folks out here on multiple sides, but how can, if they have something that they think can benefit this or plug in this, what's the best way for industry to get involved and help here?
All right, I'll take this one. Coming from the J8, we do experimentation. The best spot to start is in the J8. If you can get your technology inserted into an exercise for us to assess the value of that capability, if it shows value and the warfighters want it, then we will submit it to the JFN technical manager to be considered as a JFN capability. Another line is with the service components, the things they develop will be JFN enablers that will integrate with the JFN. So short answer is start with the J8 and we'll get it into an exercise. Ideally, if you have a funding sponsor, that definitely helps. If not, we'll look for opportunities to figure out how we can get things into the exercise.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to the big voice. Do we have any questions from the audience?
We have received a couple.
Okay. All right, that means I should see some thumbs going. I guarantee folks have questions.
That may or may not have been a little sarcasm. We have a lot of questions from the audience.
Okay. All right. Belay last order.
First question. To avoid bandwidth issues, does INDOPACOM intend to place a new military satellite requirement, or is the intent for commercial industry to solve the data pipe problem set?
I'll start with that one because I think the second half of that question is already happening independent of the demand signal that we're on. There's a lot of exciting advancements, as I think a lot of this room knows, especially in the low Earth orbit spectrum. Like the availability, unlike even our recent past, unlike even 10 years ago, the availability of satellite bandwidth, even more so going forward, is no longer a hindrance, I think, to ubiquitous networks forward. So both can answer probably positively to both sides. So obviously there's efforts, there's experimentation, there's innovation and advancement happening strictly on the military side, but it compared to some of the advancement and some of the capabilities that are not only available today but emerging in the next 2-3 years on the commercial industry side, the SATCOM bandwidth problem is going to not. I think how to best phrase it would be, not going to be a limiting factor for our ability to communicate forward.
I mean, I would argue it's going to be an attractive factor, right, to commercial. As we get that more commercial bandwidth, it's not just going to be from the operational side. The intelligence side is going to be looking at how do we take advantage of those commercial pathways so that we can leverage that as an alternate to what we're trying to do with our own IC systems as well. So.
And I guess equally, just to go to touch on both of those points, and that's only going to be one of the pathways that this system has to rely on. I mean, back to that redundancy and resiliency piece. No. I mean, yes, absolutely, we want as much satellite bandwidth as we can get, but that can't be the only path.
Yep.
There has to be, landline. There has to be 5G. There has to be, fiber. There has to be a variety of other methods by which that data can get from the sensors all the way out to those distributed forces, and that COP can be shared so we can actually deliver at speed and scale.
I think that's a really important point. I think one of the things that we kind of take for granted is that, God's eye is up there, and then God's eye is going to provide information down, and then our warfighters are going to take that, and they're going to be able to leverage it and execute it. But, how we have terrestrial sensors. We have, a DDG is a sensor. An F-35 is a sensor. How are we capturing that information and taking it up and then bringing it back to, with massive compute analytic capabilities that are spread throughout CONUS, for instance. Some of that can't be lifted and shifted forward. Some of the analytics that have to occur to be able to process that information and exploit it and disseminate it forward to the warfighter, it has to happen in the national capital region, or it has to happen somewhere else in CONUS. And so it's not just how are we able to take the information from overhead, bring it down and just move it into a weapon system. It's, hey, somebody had, there's sensing and then there's sense making. And then that sense making is critical for us to inject into both the command and control aspect of what we're doing as well as into the kill webs. And we're talking about a tremendous amount of data that has to move in multiple directions to be able to support what we're trying to do with a warfighter.
I got to chime into this question as well. I'm not going to speak to the military satellite requirement, but definitely the commercial industry helping us out. One thing we experienced this past year, it's a huge AOR. You order the Tactical Edge or the Echelon 4 unit. You've got this pizza box. You've got an awesome 200 meg download from the internet. Great. But if you're going to go from, let's say, ship to ship or MDTF to MDTF, now you're limited by the uplink of that little pizza box. So it's an uplink, downlink to a ground station, uplink, and then back down. So where I think we could help is instead of PLEO, augment that with proliferated ground stations that are co-located with some of our intel centers. So that data now, instead of going up from a limited bandwidth uplink, now you've got that full pipe to go down to the tactical edge. So I think that's a huge part where industry could help.
You had a comment?
And because I feel compelled to wave the Allied flag on this stage, the question or the additional element to that, to your point about the sensors, and how we have to leverage as many as we can. Same thing for the Allied partners who are out there. They all have sensors. They all have ground stations. How do we bring that data, that information, into the overall COP and make sure that is all being incorporated and correlated?
Well, it's interesting. So, I often liken, innovation and modernization. I always mention 3 lines of effort, right? So this form's perfect for kind of that first line of effort, technology, right? How do we do something? But what can't get left behind, and what sometimes is the other 2 lines of effort, which is process and then policy and authorities. And if you are not innovating and modernizing those efforts in conjunction with the technology, I mean, when we get into, for instance, what we're moving towards what we call object-based intelligence. And so, you look at the classic approach to how you do targeting, and then you start looking at object-based targeting. How does that change the methodology? Does it change our tradecraft? That has to be examined in conjunction with, hey, how do we build an object-based production approach for how we're going to do information management? The policy piece, I think, is one of the most critical because you would think that it would be one of the easiest things to solve, but it's oftentimes the hardest. And how do we get out of our own way, and how do we work with allies and partners, for instance, for how we are going to share information and coordinate with them? It's a huge issue, and it's one that is not moving nearly at the pace that technology is. And it's oftentimes our ability to share isn't a technological issue; it's a policy issue.
Great point. All right, let's go back to the big voice and get another question.
Yes, sir. Given the commander's stated preparation date of 2025, when should the components expect a reference design guide for native integration without adding complex gateways and protocol transitions?
Wow.
Whoa.
Hope is a strategy.
Is there a specific reference design guide question? Is that something you're building?
This kind of speaks to integration, and this is really a technical manager question, which I really can't speak to. That's CJ Scrapper as part of the technical manager lead. But we've got several tools right now in our current capability to do message translation and integration, but a lot of them, you've got to work out those interfaces to figure out how to integrate new technologies. But as far as when there's a reference to the design guide, I don't think there's one on the roadmap to be published. But I think that would need to be a discussion with the technical manager.
So each of the components are plugged in. So this sounds to me like it's again, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine question is, how are they plugging in their development efforts into your...
Got it. So this is a joint fires network. We want this to be the joint forces network. So it's an independent, new joint thing. My opinion, it should be a new AO to be this joint on this joint network. Now, each component has their own network, and that's been part of our issue. Is everybody's got their own flavor of SIPRNet, and we can't share ISR. We can't share targeting across components without a BCR process that takes a month long. So that's one of the purposes for JFN. Down at the lower echelons, we have to have direct connects to those component networks, or to those lower echelon networks, so we can pass messages off to those weapon systems. So we'd have to have a controlled interface with an authority to connect and then pass traffic between those networks at that level. But the idea for JFN is just to have a joint network for echelon 1 to 4 for fires.
I think that's going to be the tension, not to speak for Admiral Aquilino, but that you'll hear from him tomorrow, is he can't wait. He's got to move now. The 2025 timeline is like already upon us. He's got a sense of urgency. So because of that, we're going to have to be reliant on gateways. The services are working their fight up and out plan, which you would think and hope would have some of that integration and design management put into it. But we can't wait around for that. That's why we are moving out with gateways, translators, and ways to communicate, because we've got to make progress now.
Okay, so let's take one more question, at least.
How does the Joint Fires Network fit into Indo-PACOM's new Joint Mission Accelerator Directorate? Or what is J8's interaction with JMAD?
Yeah, good question.
Okay,
all of you can answer that.
The JMAD, new directorate stood up. Their job is to ensure there's efficiencies and integration between the Joint Fires Network, PM Tech in the J7, Indo-PACOM Mission Network in the J6, and Stormbreaker in the J5. So they're an oversight committee to ensure efficiencies between these. The J8 still is the operational manager for the JFN, but that's the JMAD's role.
Yeah, but we all have hostages in the JMAD. And it's a key element that we're all plugged into. I mean, you think about, I think that the intent that Admiral Aquilino had when he set that up is the concern with how all these different things, how slow it was to bring all these different initiatives together, how to synchronize and find efficiencies within the programs that we were doing within the headquarters, but also how are we able to go out within industry and find stuff? How are we able to go in the Defense Intelligence Enterprise and the DoD and find other programs that are happening? How do we bring those, best of breed talent spot, if you will, to bring that in to help enable how we bring these different programs together?
Right. Large, I'd like to emphasize the A, the accelerator.
Exactly.
It is, as JB mentioned, time's important. Who gets there first is very important in this conversation. It is about synchronizing, of course, everything was said, but it is also, there are a lot, not only in this room, but across our whole of government. There's obviously, we just read our national security strategy. There's one pacing threat, and there's a lot of organizations across the Beltway, across the whole Department of Defense, focused, resource-wise, attention-wise, manpower and expertise-wise on this problem set and this threat. And in our headquarters is the lens that focuses that, and the JMAD, one of the roles of the JMAD is to help with that focus, help with that external outreach across these key technologically challenging projects that we referenced earlier, and allow some of that assistance to focus where it needs to be. So the staff that is individually working on some of these projects can then have not only be able to focus and drive the innovation that needs to happen, but have access to those portals and those resources that, again, people are not only postured, willing, but want to and are already focused on in wanting to contribute. So I think that's the other key aspect of where the acceleration happens within the JMAD.
But a fun wrinkle that we have to deal with is, how do you find Mr. Right versus Mr. Right now? And so as we look at technology and capabilities as they're coming online, it's part of the, who comes across the line first, but is there an enduring aspect that is, I can make this integrated and interoperable with, I'm never going to get rid of legacy. So, for instance, if you come to me and you have a proprietary capability, I'm not going to talk to you. I have legacy systems and capabilities that I absolutely will always have to bring to bear into things. If you are not agnostic from an application perspective, you don't play well with others when it comes to data and application, I'm not going to have a conversation with you because I just can't use it. Because there's no way I can bring all of the capabilities of the Defense Intelligence Enterprise to bear to support what it is that we're trying to do. So play well with others.
All right. Okay. We're at time, but I want to give, this is 1 minute, no more than 30 seconds. All right. What didn't get said here to say that you're as you're closing? What's your last 30-second soundbite you want to leave for the audience? So I'm gonna just go down the line. So Mark, you're up first.
Okay, real quick. Again, a lot of brilliance in this room. I think if we all don't do this, because we only have 30 seconds, but if we were to close your eyes and think about what does communications look like, say 10 years from now, a decade, 2033, that's 5 generations of Moore's Law from now. We can't predict exactly where technology is going to go, but a lot of those aspects I think we'd agree upon, and those are key to making JFN work. Ubiquitous networks forward, data access, processing power in the hands of the forward edge of the battlefield, probably unmanned systems, ubiquitous. There are aspects we'd all agree on. And so some of this is not only enabling that, but I would say, again, back to the themes you heard, when we get there in this environment and with this adversary is as important as where we're going. So the policies, they have to change. We'll get there. But leveraging the technology, the when, the how quickly and efficient we're able to do this, that is critical in this conversation. And that is what I think we bring these forums together for. But, sorry.
Yeah, I would just really quickly say thanks. The progress that we've made thus far has been, just incredible. It has been real money against real programs that has made a real difference in improvements, whether to our training infrastructure, to the Joint Fires Network, and the things that we're able to bring to bear. And so that has been done, not only because people have a vested interest in their companies, but because they have a vested interest in this stable, secure environment that we have here in the Indo-Pacific. So thank you for that. Having said that, no good deed goes unpunished. There's a lot of work still to be done. It is, like we talked about, extremely challenging. And, as I look at things, it's those on the periphery type capabilities. How do we replicate space and cyber? How do we connect live virtual constructive environments? How do we start wielding artificial intelligence in a more focused manner? That we still need quite a bit of help. And so I'm very appreciative of the work that's been done thus far, but we still have quite a bit of work to do, and we know that our partnership with the team here is going to yield those results.
Yeah, I'll say thanks as well. Obviously, it's a great opportunity here as an allied partner to be included amongst this group up here on stage. And that is kind of the point I want to hit on in relation to what JB just said. As we move this forward, a lot of great work is being done, continues to be done, and I think it's fantastic where we are headed with this capability. But as I look out into the audience and industry partners who are looking to get on board with this and contribute to it, we have to keep the combined nature of this in mind. That always has to be part of the solution. And Admiral Aquilino was very clear on that, in that this is not a fight that the U.S. is going to go into alone. They have to have as many partners, or we have to have as many partners on board as possible. So the system, the network, has to enable that. It has to consider that combined aspect across all domains to ensure that it is going to deliver the effect and achieve the Admiral's vision, which, of course, just elevates the level of complexity we're talking about. But ultimately, if we can't work with partners, that is a recipe for failure.
Ben. I'll echo the thanks. What I would say is knowledge. So data is a means to an end, right? How do I get the knowledge that I need to execute fires? How do I get the knowledge that I need to establish domain awareness, to understand what that force disposition picture looks like? How do I inform how I do my collection orchestration? How do I use that to feed into decision advantage for the commander? All of that is based off of knowledge. Data is just how we move that knowledge around. So I think that gets lost a lot of times. We use the term data as this ubiquitous thing. But ultimately, it's about how am I getting the knowledge critical for us to be able to execute these functions across? What is the right data path to do that in these instances?
All right, and I'm just going to recap with my 3 objectives. With the PT COP, I've got high confidence in our PT COP, but we're always looking for new sensors to integrate. So if you've got a platform that you want to integrate, let's talk about how to get that fed into the JFN to be included in the PT COP. The Joint Battle Manager, we've got a lot of great vendors out there in industry having us look at their capabilities, so we're looking at a few of those options, and we're doing quite well in that area. And the biggest concern I've got is the transport across the theater. We just need help for more commercial agnostic transport across this AOR.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your cooperation and your collaboration. I'll turn it back over to Dick Palmieri to close this out officially.
To close officially, first of all, thank you to all of you for taking your time away from your busy schedules at IndoPACOM to share these messages. You've given us all a lot to think about, and while you took 3 questions, I think there's another 500 or more out in the audience. So on behalf of the audience, I do hope you get to spend some time here on the stage or around afterwards to talk to some of these members out here to field some more of those. This is an important learning time for the command, for the partners out here in the audience who want to find ways to help you achieve Admiral Aquilino's vision. So thank you. So 2 things. First of all, on your behalf, we're AFCEA Hawaii and AFCEA International, thank you. And we'll be making a donation to Windward Wounded Warrior on your behalf. So thank you for that. And then also, I'd like to thank 4 of the members who haven't received coins yet. Thank you for your time. Hopefully these coins will be a remembrance, and you can talk about AFCEA International, AFCEA Hawaii. And these opportunities are very important for how we get your message out. So thank you very much.